All right, it's the moment you've been waiting for. We are going to hook up our random button and we are going to actually retrieve different Star Wars characters and update the labels accordingly. So first, let's go ahead and hook up our button action. And I'm going to open up our storyboard in the assistant editor. And I'm going to go ahead and clean this up, get rid of these comments that we have. And let's go ahead and click on the button, and you can control drag over into our view controller. And I'm going to put this below our view did load, and it's going to be an action. And I'm going to say random clicked, and I'm going to say connect. And then I'm going to close our assistant editor and just clean this up a little bit. And what we want to do is when we click on the random button, we want to get a random person. Right now we have hard-coded in our constants.swift, we have a specific number. We're getting Luke every time. What we want to do is we want to create a random number. So I'm going to remove that. And here in our person API, we are going to have as a parameter for our getRandomPersonURL session and ID. And that is going to be of type int. And then we are going to append that to our person URL. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put this inside of quotation marks and say person URL. So we are string interpolating this constant. And then we are going to string interpolate the ID, which is going to be a random number that we pass into this function. And that should work just fine for us. So let's go back to select person VC, and we need to create that random number. So I'm going to say let random equal, and we have our handy new int.random methods, and we want the closed range. And I don't know if you recall, but if you look at the Swappy API request for people, it will show you that there are 87 total. So we want from 1 ... to 87. That's going to be our range for random numbers. Okay, so we have our random number. Now we just need to use our person API. So I'm going to cut from here when we were using it before and add that to our random clicked. And then this getRandomPersonURL session, you'll see that it is now missing an argument for parameter ID in call since we modified that function. So I'm going to click and say fix, and that will add that in for us. And then we can just pass in random right here. All right, and let's just verify that that's working. So I'm going to run this, and each time that we click on random, we should see printed out a different Star Wars character's name. All right, so I'm going to click random, and we get that person's name. All right, looks like we are in business. Looks like we had a blank one, so there might have been a character's number that did not actually have data. But yeah, looking good. All right, so now let's go ahead and actually hook up our, or I should say update our labels here. So I'm going to say namelabel.text is equal to person.name. Then we have height label.text is equal to person.height. Then we have mass label.text is equal to person.mass. Then we have hair label.text is equal to person.hair. And we have birth year label.text is equal to person.birth year, and we have the gender label.text is equal to person.gender according to the Swappy API. And that should do it. Oh, I forgot we need to say self on all of these because as we are inside of a closure here, we have to explicitly say where we are referencing these from. So these are all self references. I'm going to say fix all of those. That looks good. All right, and I'm going to run this now, but we're going to get a crash, and we'll talk about why here in just a second. All right, so I'm going to click random, and there we go. Okay, here we go. UI label.text must be used from main thread only. All right, so let's take a look at our person API.swift. So we are calling and using this data task here. So what is happening here is that this request is done on what is called a background thread, okay? So you have the main thread, and then you have any other thread pretty much. And those are all background threads. The main thread is what is responsible for handling any of the UI updates and user inputs and all of that. So anything that takes basically any amount of time, you will always want to put on a background thread. Things like network requests. And that's because if you make a network request on the main thread and it's taking a long time for that data to come back, your main thread is frozen. The user can't do anything, and it's a really bad experience for the user. So any of these long network requests or time-consuming calculations or things like that, those should be done on a background thread. And then when you have what you need, whatever results it is, or whether the data has come back from your network request, then you get back on the main thread, and then you do what you need to do to update UI or anything like that. All right. So right now we are on the background thread when we say completion. And we need to get back on the main thread before we do this completion. And that's really easy. All you got to do is say dispatch queue, which manages the execution of work items. And we say .main, so we're going to get back onto the main thread. And then we say .async, and all we do is just move this completion right to here. And now we are back on the main thread when we pass this completion, and back in our select person VC, now we should be back on the main thread when we attempt to update all of these labels. So I'm gonna save that and run again. Alrighty, here we go. Random. Oh, there we go. Han Solo, hide, everything. All right, looks good. That person, Chewbacca. All right, so this is working awesome. Very, very cool. All right, that is exciting. All right, the only thing that I noticed here was that we have default values still set here. So even before we've done anything, we have some information here. Let's go ahead and fix that. Let's just change the text here to just dashes to indicate that that we don't have any data here yet. All right, let's run that one more time. All right, looks good. And then random, and boom, Finn, nice. All right, so that is awesome. Play with that for a while, and then come back to me in the next lesson. We'll see you there.